Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. I love what I do as a clinical psychologist, helping people improve their lives. But it may surprise you that as much as I help others, my clients have helped me, particularly in understanding human behavior. One of the things that I've learned is that we are very much creatures of habit, that the environment that we grew up in greatly affects what we're attracted to later in our adult lives. I can't even estimate the number of times I've seen this, but I've seen it often. A girl, a boy, is raised in an incredibly dysfunctional family, where there's chaos, where there's drama, where there's just so much mayhem, it's almost hard to believe. And then finally, this beautiful soul who has gone through so much is able to break free of the family and gets out on their own. And what do? Do they find peace, happiness, and joy for the rest of their life as they finally have broken free of the dysfunction that they grew up with, and now they can create a world in which they love, which is filled with peace, tranquility, and happiness, because now they're the creator of their lives. You don't have to do what I do to know the answer to what happens to many of these souls. It's almost like there's a magnet inside of them that says, I need to create a life just like the life I grew up in. They may start by experimenting with drugs, just as recreational enjoyment, but so sadly, this turns into a nightmare of addictions. Others may go down the path of finding a partner or friends who are just like the family, the dynamics they grew up in, and now they're stuck in the exact same cycle they grew up in. Perhaps their father beat them, and now they're in a relationship where their partner beats them. Perhaps their mother struggled with psychosis, and now they're in a relationship with someone struggling with emotional volatility. Now we all know that these may be extreme cases, but do we necessarily create a life of peace and tranquility for ourselves? Or when we do get to the point where we can, do we do things that sabotage it? Don't we all know someone who, after working so hard to get good grades in school, goes off to university and spend the first year of their university experiences getting drunk and partying and perhaps getting involved with some very bad choices? Or at the opposite end of the spectrum, how about someone who's worked 30, 40 years of their life and finally retires and has all this free time? And what do? They spend hours every day watching the news and become bitter and angry because that's all they see in the world. What happens is we are so conditioned to crave drama in our entertainment that we become addicted to creating drama in our own lives. Let me ask you a question. If you were to go to a movie where everyone is happy, getting along, and all the problems are solved very easily, what would you call it? I think most people would call it boring. But now think of the movie like Game of Thrones, where conflict, betrayal, and high stakes are the entire point of the series. Conflict is what makes a story compelling. In the world of fiction, it's a dopamine hit of suspense and a catharsis of revolution without any real-world consequences. That's why we like our shows. But sadly, many of us are addicted to this dopamine hit in our own lives. I remember once reading a story about a woman who was recovering from being married to an alcoholic, and the relationship was incredibly dysfunctional. But when she started dating again, and she met her next husband, he came home on time, he was reliable, and he was boring. She described how she literally had to recondition herself to be in a relationship that was boring, because she was addicted, even though she hated it, the thrills that came with being married to a dysfunctional alcoholic. What can happen to us is our brains get conditioned to associate drama with engagement. When we see peace, we see it as boredom. What we have is an internal thermostat that tells us how much happiness or success we're comfortable with. When we exceed it, we subconsciously create a problem to bring ourselves back down to a more familiar, even a less happy emotional state. We can see this so often in a beautiful young lady who finally breaks free of a dysfunctional parent, perhaps a father who beat her, called her names, and was cruel to her. And when she finally gets out there on her own, she falls madly in love with someone who doesn't treat her well, but someone who treats her just like her father. If you were to ask her, why is she with this man, particularly when she can have so many choices, she'll say, because he moves my heart. I met a beautiful woman once who was older, in her 70s, when I met her, and she told me the story of how her father was an absentee father who didn't seem to really care for her. But when she met her first husband, he was terrible. He was controlling, he was verbally abusive, and he cheated on her. And when she finally broke free of him, she ended up remarrying a second man, and he was much better, and he was a good man. And when I met her, he had already passed, but she was telling me once that her first husband, to that very day, when she would think about him, her heart would flutter, and after all those years, she still had an attraction towards him. Thankfully, she'd broken free of that attraction, of that drama, but it was still there, powerful. Our addiction to drama can manifest in many ways. In a relationship, we can start a fight when things feel too quiet, misinterpreting a neutral text to create conflict. Or at work, we can create unnecessary urgency around a task, or engage in office gossip to feel part of the action. Internally, we can ruminate on a small slight until it becomes a massive source of anxiety. Or we can keep refreshing our social media, looking for something to be outraged about. The big question is, why would we do this? What's the payoff? What's the hit that we get from this addiction? The truth is, it can make us feel alive and important. We become the main character in a compelling story. It can provide a rush of adrenaline and cortisol, which can feel like energy and purpose. And like most addictions, it can be a powerful distraction from deeper feelings of emptiness or inadequacy. But sadly, there can be a high cost to our drama addiction. There's emotional exhaustion. Living in a constant state of self-inflicted crisis is draining and will lead to burnout. It can also damage relationships. We really can't have a healthy connection when we treat others like a supporting character in our personal drama. It pushes away those who value peace. And then we can get stuck in stagnation when we spend our energy creating and maintaining drama. This energy is not spent on personal growth, career goals, or genuine happiness. People who are healthy surround themselves with other people who are healthy. People who are into personal growth surround themselves with others into personal growth. If we don't join them on this higher level of happiness, the relationships will not last. Sooner or later, they will leave us. But the sad thing is, we can always find someone else to replace them. The most vivid example I've ever seen of this is a story of a speaker who had been involved in domestic violence and lived in a shelter and was now helping other women get well. And she told me how, in the shelters, when the women are so relieved to be away from their abusive relationship, she said within a few days, they get restless, they get bored, and then they want to go to the bars and search for a new partner. But a bar isn't the best place to find a calm, peaceful partner. So if we're struggling with a drama addiction, how do we write a new script how do we break the cycle? We have to follow 3 important steps. The first one is develop a narrative awareness. This crucial first step is simply noticing the pattern. When tense moments arise, we have to ask ourselves, am I solving a real problem or am I creating a story? This very simple question can stop a dramatic spiral in its tracks. We ask our spouse in the morning to pick up something from the store on the way home, and when they walk in the door, they don't have it. Creating a story might be, wow, why did they do that? Do they even care for me? Maybe they were with someone else. Maybe they're cheating on me. Maybe they don't care. I need to let them know how I feel. And we start screaming at them. Instead, we could solve a problem by saying, hey, I see you didn't bring home that item from the store. And they look at us and say, oh my goodness, I forgot. I'll go get it right now. We say, oh, thank you so much. And the story is over, and it ends well. The second step is to find healthy drama. It's just human and normal for us to desire challenges and excitement. The key is to channel it productively. For example, we might set up a fitness challenge for ourselves to run a 5K, or learn a complex skill like learning how to play the piano, or perhaps take a calculated professional risk like taking an AI course on the side and seeing if it doesn't lead to new opportunities, or perhaps pour our energy into a creative project like planning for our next vacation and where we're going to go and what we're going to see. This is generative drama, not destructive drama. And then the third step, which I really love, is practicing contentment, actively learning to sit with peace. Frame it as not boredom, but as stability, clarity, and peace. For decades now, every day, I sit and meditate for a half an hour in the morning and a half an hour at night. And often, it is the best part of my day. And yet I'm doing nothing but just being. And we can also practice learning mindfulness and gratitude practices as tools to raise our upper limit of happiness so we're more comfortable just being happy. If you're interested, I actually just wrote a new book. Literally, it just came off the press and is on Audible too, called Awakening Wonder: How to Live with Presence, Joy, and a Childlike Heart. In conclusion, our story is the story that we write. If we're not careful, our addiction to drama can lead to sometimes devastating consequences to our lives. And the unintentional drama that we can sometimes create in our lives is the path to an unhappy life. The goal isn't to live a life with no story. It's to become conscious, deliberate author of our story that we actually want to live. One where the plot is driven by passion and growth, not by self-made chaos. May we choose not just to create a melodrama, but instead create a masterpiece. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. Until next time, accept what is, love what is.